Say, for the sake of argument, it's the start of another week at the office, and you and your coworkers are milling around the break room putting off getting to work because until you sit down at your desk, the week hasn't actually started. Mostly you're chatting about what you all got up to over the weekend and how you can't wait for the next season of Killing Eve, but then the new guy, who doesn't know any better, starts talking about the healthcare system and what he thinks is wrong with it. The rest of you all know what this means. If talk turns political, you have to hear the opinions of the guy from payroll. Guy from Payroll takes issue with the new guy's comments about how patients in many other countries pay less for better outcomes. Guy from Payroll thinks overhauling the healthcare system would be a long and difficult process to create a system where he would pay higher taxes and have fewer options. And all for what? He doubts socialized medicine, if it even worked, would be worth the trade-offs, and even lets slip the phrase, "Do Democrats think they can live forever?" To cut the tension, someone starts talking about their kids who've just started at a new school. But talking about school leads to talking about safety drills, and talking about safety drills leads to talking about school shootings, and now the new guy's on gun reform. And he speaks passionately about how easily monsters can get their hands on assault rifles. But Payroll counters that even if you get rid of every gun in the country, criminals will just import them. A bad person can always find a way to do bad things, and why should he, as a responsible gun owner, be punished for the crimes of a monster? There is, again, an uncomfortable silence. Guy from Payroll fiddles with his tie. He doesn't like this any more than you, he just can't help himself. Someone tries to change the subject, but by now, new guy is looking to win an argument, so he steers you straight to Roe v. Wade. And Payroll is off and running, talking about how beautiful childhood is and how wonderful it is to be a parent, and how it's tragic for any life to be cut short before it begins, and how evil it is to have state-sanctioned, but new guy just can't keep his mouth shut. He says, if you wanted fewer abortions, you would promote comprehensive sex education and easy access to contraceptives, because that's all that has ever reliably lowered abortion rates in any country. All making it a crime does is determine whether the abortion happens in a doctor's office or a motel room. It is deathly silent.
Talk to him, new guy, talk to him!
People shuffle in place. Finally, without making eye contact, the guy from Payroll just says, ugh. I hate Mondays. Everybody shuffles off to their cubicles, scowling more at the new guy than at the guy from Payroll, and another week officially begins. Much as it pains me to admit, Guy from Payroll has made one genuinely good point this morning. Mondays suck. It is a truth universally acknowledged that the work week will end talking about how great Fridays are and begin 3 days later lamenting the scourge of Mondays. But what are you gonna do? We could start work on Tuesdays and end on Saturdays, but that's just kicking the can down the week. The cold reality is, week's gotta start somewhere, and even your most unlikable coworker has a right to complain about it and get sympathy. But why am I talking about it? I'm a YouTuber. Mondays only suck for people with real jobs.
Big facts.
Because what I want you to understand today is that the conservative thinks about people dying of preventable illnesses, school shootings, and back alley abortions the way you think about Mondays. The conservative mindset tends to sort things into binaries with no room for scale. Mass shootings either happen or they don't. You can talk about how much safer countries with robust gun control are, and they'll just say, here's a shooting that happened in England. Here's a shooting that happened in Australia. Gun control didn't stop them. You can't regulate evil. And this is the kind of sentence that can drive you up the wall, because it is, on its face, obviously true.
Yo, it's crazy. That is literally the last 4 weeks of content I put out in one sentence. I tell you guys this all the time. To have these conversations with these people is such a black and white. Oh, I found an example. Yo, my mans said, you do know that it's already coming out that Antifa members were posing as Trump supporters on the Capitol raid, right? And from the videos available, they show that they didn't break in, they were let in. He thinks it was Antifa. He's that far gone. He's a young kid. He's at my age. We went to the same school together. You did not learn that there. Where the hell, how did you fall into the conservative think tank? You literally are Dominican, bro. The fuck are you doing? So he said this shit. You cannot deny that there was Antifa, BLM, and Trump supporters all storming the Capitol. Please not tell me you think that it was 100% Trump supporters there. For the love of God, the YouTube video I provided shows what I'm saying. It's a memeology video.
Yeah, can we do that real quick?
Now we watched the Capitol raid through their eyes. He thinks that was Antifa. We just watched it. We saw it with our conviction in our heart. We know what was there. We know who was there. We know why they were there. But it was Antifa.
Wobbling with protest. I don't want to see you get hurt.
And then they do this fucking now they're gonna do this cherry pick shit. So that's a lie. That video is cherry picking. Oh, they were nice to the cops. It wasn't a storm. They weren't meaning to hurt anybody. They were just protesting. He thinks that this is real. He thinks there's a Hickman County Antifa. He thinks there's a Hickman County Antifa. On November 4th, don't forget to disguise yourselves as patriots, Trump supporters. Wear MAGA hats, USA flags, 3%er insignias. A convincing police uniform is even better. That way, police and patriots responding to us won't know who their enemies are, and all lookers in the media will think they're Trump supporters rioting. So it's harder to turn popular opinion against us. Who would write that? You're lucky I'm fucking post-blocked. You're so lucky. You are a clown. The clown car has arrived. That's fake. That's literally fake. A faked screenshot. So he says the poster's from November 3rd, 2020. The screenshot was taken at 11:21 from a screenshot that was taken at 9:37 on a thing that was said 1 day ago. If this was said 1 day ago, then this post could not be from November 3rd because these two times would have to be this, unless that's the morning. Yeah, that could be the morning. But see, if it's the morning, it wouldn't say 1 day ago. Huh. Hickman County. Hold on. We're going to do some detective work real quick. Wow, guys, that was easy. That was easy. That was easy. That was easy. That was fucking easy. The picture on the flyer is an altered version of urban artist Banksy's Love is in the Air, in which the bouquet of flowers is replaced by what appears to be a Molotov cocktail. Wow. So you're posting fake screenshots to prove your point, and I didn't have the patience. I don't have the patience to educate people like this. This is fucking stupid. Yo, can you please provide proof of how you know it's fake? And here we reach the dynamic. Tell me how it's fake. Prove to me how these things are fake. Well, if you say it's fake, you have to back up your claims, man. Prove to me that God is real. Prove to me that God is not. You're the one creating the narrative. Prove to me that this shit exists. Oh my God. Oh my God. So yeah, it's always this fucking binary. It's always this fucking binary. You can't be wrong because you can't be right.
But it's only applicable in this context thanks to the word that's implied but not stated. You can't regulate all evil. Yes, since they've had gun control, there have been shootings in England and Australia. Does it matter that these shootings are far less deadly and happen far less often? Does it matter that making guns harder to get has saved tens of thousands of lives? Like, do we really need to explain why stores put junk food you know you shouldn't buy right next to the checkout counter? Because the easier it is to do a thing, the more it happens. The mentality here is that if you can't stop every shooting, you shouldn't bother stopping any. If you can't save every life, there's no point improving healthcare. Nothing short of literally defeating death will be good enough. It is a wholesale rejection of thinking in terms of systems. Notice how Payroll phrases his argument, a bad person can always find a way to do bad things. Person. Singular. If a criminal can still get a gun, they extrapolate that every criminal can get a gun, in the same way that if a poor person can get a job, every poor person can get a job. Which, no! If there are fewer jobs than people who need them, there's going to be unemployment. And if there are fewer guns than people who want to shoot them, there's going to be less gun crime. If they talked about populations of people, they'd have to acknowledge that some percentage succeeds at doing bad things, and a percentage fails. And since percentages are different across cultures, we must have some influence over them. But a binaristic model of things either happen or they don't leaves no room for percentages. Was there a shooting? Then there is still evil in the world. A conservative will generally agree with you about what the ills of society are: bigotry, violence, disease, oppression, poverty. But they don't view them as problems to be solved. They are facts of life.
I was just about to say that, you got to live with that. That's why the dude I just showed you, he's like, people will die. People die all the time. We can't just stop life because a couple of people are dying from a virus. The binary refuses for them to get into a solution area. Therefore, it either let's say all the water rises about 5%. Like, that's why they are able to come out with these like hyper realistic scenarios, and they love to attach to Marvel characters and this and that, because see, even the greatest heroes in the world, with all the powers that they have combined, the technology at their resources, and every single person on Earth supporting them, they couldn't stop Thanos from achieving his goal. Therefore, evil will always win out. So you just have to live with it. It's just a thing that's going to happen eventually sometime, you just got to learn to live with it. And I'm sitting there like, no way. No way are you, no way. You're bugging, bro. You're bugging. It's just a fact of life. People die. But then you over police, so why is everybody in the black community dying? Maybe if they picked up a book instead of a gun, they wouldn't be getting shot so often. I don't know, maybe if we passed good gun legislation, it would not only reduce the amount of mass shooters, but it would reduce the amount of crime in poverty-ridden cities that lead to gun crime.
Of course, racism is terrible. But it's a Monday. Trying to fight racism is like trying to fight the first law of motion. The only reason to even talk about it is to commiserate. Besides, if we didn't have bad white people, how would we know we're the good ones? Morality to them is not about fighting evil. It is a set of shared opinions on what evil is. When bad things happen, we sit around agreeing that they are bad, and anyone who says otherwise, we excommunicate. That's what talking about tragedy is for. And I think it's why they get so mad at us when we politicize tragedies, as in, when yet another shooting happens, we talk about what could be done to prevent them. It's not just that they refuse to do anything about the problem, though it is definitely that. It's that we're not participating in the ritual of thoughts and prayers. Solemnity is how we perform our morals after a crisis. How do they know where we stand if we don't participate? If evil can't be regulated, but we're saying guns can? Are we saying the shooting wasn't evil? And on its face, this seems completely contradictory to all the other things they claim to believe. Sometimes you want to scream at Payroll. How can you think regulating guns won't reduce shootings, but somehow regulating women will reduce abortions? But here's the real kicker. He doesn't. He doesn't think illegalizing abortions will make them happen less. What he wants is to throw people in jail for getting them. It's right there in how he talks about gun rights. Why should I be punished for the crimes of a monster? To him, the law isn't about shaping society. It's about who gets punished. In this view, human nature is immutable. People are going to be gay and do crime, and get abortions and take drugs. And the law is not there to guide, it is there to judge. It is there to sanctify one particular walk of life as the right way. The reason they're opposed to contraceptives and sex ed is not because they don't work, but because they shouldn't work. It doesn't even matter that kids who get abstinence-only education have just as much sex as the ones who learn about condoms. Acknowledging that teenagers have sex is saying it's okay, and abstinence says it's not. And if it doesn't work, it's because you're just not trying hard enough. More abstinence, more abstinence. It's nothing to do with the way the world is, but the way they want it to present. As the philosopher Taylor Schwiesel once said, shade never made anybody less gay.
Oh, they're so pretty. Everything's so beautiful, Everybody's so pure and innocent. My girl Kaylee's gonna be a fucking swimmer, yes. While they continuously have marital affairs. And the whole idea of adultery is brought about when it comes to white people. Like, they live in their own... It's such a bad echo chamber that they think other echo chambers exist. There is no portion of free thought. That's what I was talking about to you guys earlier. I was like, yo, I want to be able to get underneath the layers of just talking about this stuff superfluously. I could fact check it. I could show you that this shit is all bullshit. But what is the end goal of what you get from this stream? Do you want to be educated? Do you want to understand the underlying aspects of why that happens? Well, for that example, especially, they view having multiple babies as a black thing, even though like Octomom exists and they make television. That's why they make television shows with the weirdest people who do the weirdest things, and it's generally fucking white people. That's where that term white people shit came from. Not literally, because like it's always been a thing, but how we address it in internet culture. That's why fucking jumping off rocks in the middle of the ocean is white people shit. I would never do that. I would never put my life in harm's way. But they don't have that relegation care. That's cool. That's vacationing. That's something that you got to work hard to achieve. You've got to work multiple hours at your job to be able to actually fund such an exhilarating experience. And being black in America means that not only will I probably never get to do it, but I would be shamed if I did. So that makes me even more hesitant. I'd rather save up money and buy something more practical. Like fucking food in my fridge.
But if shade crams all the queer people back into the closet, that's how it will look to straight folks. The goal is to communicate which types of people have to fear law enforcement and which get to admire them. And once you see the conservative view of laws and customs as mapping a path we are meant to walk and punishing deviation, you start to see why we have a religious right and not so much a religious left. It describes a world drenched in sin that cannot be cleansed from the inside, but walk the path, you might save yourself. Punish those who stray, you might save them as well. And you can see how talking in terms of systemic problems and harm reduction just bounces off of that. It's like saying it's better to die with one unconfessed mortal sin on your soul than 7. Nope. You're still going to hell. And what good is it to talk about populations? This is about you. Evil exists to test your integrity. When your soul is judged at the gates of heaven, you will stand alone. And if God still hasn't rewarded your faithfulness, you must not have been pious enough. More piety, more piety. This is not to say that reactionary conservatives in the US are just a pack of Catholics. In fact, they're quite the trail mix. We got Protestants, pagans, a surprising number of atheists. But maybe you're familiar with the term Christian atheist? I don't mean the school of philosophy that's about following the teachings of Christ but not believing in his divinity, but colloquially, the philosophy of, I don't believe in God, but the God I don't believe in is Jehovah. It's a person who, despite not being a Christian, has a set of ethics clearly informed by a Christian upbringing or by living in a not officially but in practice Christian nation. Regardless of creed, this is the dominant morality of the United States, and it spans the whole political spectrum. Take, for example, the often liberal sentiment, I refuse to vote for the lesser of two evils. There is no consequentialist argument for this. Perhaps if you and an organized bloc of citizens threatened to withhold your votes in order to influence policy, but as a purely individual act, the consequentialist would argue your goal is to achieve the most ethical outcome. and that if there are two evils and one or the other is going to be in a position of power, voting for the lesser is more ethical than staying home. The consequentialist would argue you are just as responsible for the results of your inaction as for the actions you take. When both options are terrible, all you can do is mitigate the damage. But that's not generally the way it feels. It feels like refusing to participate or choosing someone you want to win but whom you know isn't going to is the more ethical option. That voting for the lesser is a moral compromise. This feeling is independent of results. It doesn't mitigate damage, it doesn't reduce harm, but it does preserve your integrity.
Yeah.
That feeling is very powerful. Many politicians have staked their careers on it. Our society has always told us that voting for any flavor of evil will leave a stain on our souls. And it continues to feel this way even among people who no longer believe in souls. The greatest difference between left and right is simply in how common and how intense this feeling is. This is why fascism can be so enticing to the religious and irreligious alike, why they have such an easy time making inroads with conservatives. Because fascism is politics as faith. There's a reason the Nazis talked about the Übermensch. They didn't reject the framework that evil is ancient and the world is polluted and nothing short of divine intervention can save it. They said the world could be saved and only by them, because to the other races, Aryans are as gods. And which would you rather believe? In the left's framework, we are the cause of all the world's problems. But to hear the fascists tell it, everyone else is the cause and we're the solution. So conservatives can brush off moderate change as impossible, yet embrace people who promise to turn the whole world inside out.
Damn,
because nothing short of that is worth trying. I would caution against assuming this mentality is a natural outgrowth of Christianity or paganism or atheism. It is a perversion not representative of any belief system save itself. It spreads because people in power spread it, and people listen when they want their egos flattered and their sins absolved and to be folded into an authority structure that privileges them. They'll do what it takes to conform whatever beliefs they came in with to it. The necessary counter-narrative is to stress that the problems we face are not natural features of the world, that, in fact, very little of human life is natural, and even if it were, what is natural is not necessarily what is right. The way nature deals with a pandemic is to let everyone without a genetic resistance to the illness die, and if what's left is not a stable breeding population, you go extinct. That's natural. Humanity as we know it only exists in defiance of nature. Every form of bigotry, every means of oppression, is a thing we created. They are human problems, and they have human solutions. They have not always existed, and there are places in the world where they are being addressed. And the idea that the worst things on Earth have no great significance, that most evil is a chaotic mess born of human fallibility, can be very depressing to consider. It can also be empowering. This is a secular view. It can be reconciled with spirituality, but not with reactionary fundamentalism, which is the point. And it can be kind of baffling to assert that when bad things happen, maybe we should do something about it. But you just can't take for granted that when someone agrees a thing is bad, they're agreeing it's a problem. But if you cross that hurdle, again, not with the people spewing bullshit, but the people they're trying to convince, you may find incrementalism still doesn't do anything for them. They may still long for something more dramatic. And frankly, a lot of us feel the same. So maybe that's a gateway to talking about deeper change. Because we don't need to be as gods to turn the world inside out.
That was good. That was really good. That was fire. That was definitely fire.